What's up, guys? It's been a while. Yeah, I'm keen. I'm sort of feeling a bit more invigorated to get this done. Just running solo at the moment. We'll have a bit of an update, life, work, what's upcoming for us, the upcoming SA Sprint Car season, the Adelaide 500, and of course, we're going to talk about that traction control. Last couple of months, I changed jobs, and obviously, work's what pays the bills. This certainly does not pay the bills. This, in fact, costs me a lot of money, as I've previously touched on. So work's actually very hectic. Just sort of it's flat to the board all the time, 5-6 days a week. So between having my own personal time plus trying to tee up my guest in their own personal time on a weekend or a Friday night has been extremely difficult. So it is what it is, kind of thing. You can't push anyone into doing a podcast like, hey, I'm coming to your place and I'm going to sit down for 2 hours and talk smack. It's not really, doesn't really work like that. So, and I don't want to push anyone into it either, and then they're reluctant to do it. I just don't want to do it. And yeah, like I've spoken about before, I don't want to go down the road of doing Zoom podcasts. It's just not my thing. So yeah, sort of in the background and stuff too, looking at building another shed, and I'll do a studio in that and that sort of stuff too. So we'll have that set up where people can just rock up and we can just bang, get into it, film. I don't have to go to their place and set stuff up and all that sort of carry on. So yeah, that's sort of something. So sort of adding to why I'm working my absolute ring out as well. So yeah, so that's just sort of where it's at in terms of having guests and stuff like that. But yeah, I thought I'll see how these sort of single ones go and see if there's sort of enough to sort of talk about weekly or bi-weekly or something like that. Sort of just keep this ticking along, because obviously if you've been following along since the start, the whole Hour of Power thing has sort of taken a big change. It sort of started out as a podcast, and then I got asked to go to the track and do interviews and that sort of stuff, and then that turned into covering the whole night, and yeah, sort of it's all sort of snowballed from there. And obviously all the at track stuff's sort of well taken over the podcast. I've sort of do my dash locally with everyone. Obviously I just wish the budget was there just to fly around the country and sit down with people and do it, but that's just not something that's a viable option probably ever, I'd have to say, unless this is making oodles of money. So that's just sort of where it's at the moment. I think we're going to be at the track 42 nights this season. I, to be honest, don't actually know heaps about the calendar. That's sort of Mrs. Beeger's department. I'm sort of more of the one on the Wednesday night going, oh, we're going here this weekend, aren't we? And she's already got everything sorted out. So yeah, that's where that's at. Obviously there's a bunch of stuff too that's sort of clashing that I want to go do as well. There's always something that's going to happen in Speedway, unfortunately. It is what it is. So yeah, and then probably the other thing is too, I've been helping out, me and Mrs. Beach have both been helping out SA Sprint Cars with their sort of media stuff too. That's something I've sort of taken a lot of pride in, to be honest, to be asked to do that and sort of help out with that sort of stuff, because SA Sprint Cars is definitely something that's very close to my heart, and I want to sort of see it get back to where it deserves to be. Obviously everyone knows we sort of struggle for cars, and that's always going to be a thing in our state, just purely based off of the fact of our population. Obviously we don't have the population of other states, so there's going to be less people that are into sprint cars for a start, and there's a smaller population, so then there's less people with money and all that sort of stuff. So that's always going to be the kind of thing. But we've always had a very good history of sprint cars in SA, and always a very strong sort of bunch of guys as well. So to sort of help them out and sort of bring the name back to SA Sprint Cars, I'm very proud of the fact that we were asked to help them out with that. So if it's an SA Sprint Car show, I'm sort of putting not sort of, I'm definitely putting our stuff on the back burner to help them out and bring that up to where it deserves to be, especially with the fact of like, we've got like the Adelaide 500 coming up and the Australian title and all that sort of stuff. Like, we sort of really need to nail it, and then hopefully, next season stuff's bigger and better, and we've got all the metadata to be able to go to sponsors and all of that sort of stuff. That's sort of where I'm at with all of that. I sort of can't make this grow without making the local racing grow either. So that's, sort of all part and parcel kind of thing. So yeah, it's obviously a huge season for SA Sprint Cars coming up. So yeah, so I think amongst the 42 nights that we've got, it's not obviously all SA Sprint Car stuff. So there's a few other series that want us to cover and stuff like that, and there's a few other. Obviously, there's a bunch of personal nights too that we want to go cover, certain events and stuff like that too. So pretty much if it's a non-SA Sprint Car show, it's sort of programming as normal kind of thing. So yeah, but if it's SA Sprint Car show, it's sort of focusing on their media first and foremost, and then ours in the background kind of thing. So there'll probably be shorter YouTube clips on those nights. So it is what it is kind of thing. So, because that's probably the thing in like the last 12 months, it's just such a sort of drastic change from doing podcasts to sort of more YouTube stuff, more social media posts, and sort of delving into the writing stuff a little bit more too. I'm currently sort of researching the whole website thing too, so I sort of got a blog post sort of area. Like I sort of have this, I don't know, I suppose you call it like a vibe. I sort of have this vibe that like blogs are going to make a comeback in some sort of way, I think. I sort of noticed a few more popping up just in general across the social media landscape. So I sort of, I think I might sort of delve into that stuff a little bit more too, which is a weird thing because people don't read anymore, but yet blogs still seem to be a thing. And yeah, it's a weird dynamic. So yeah, I'm sort of looking into all of that sort of stuff too. And yeah, obviously I'm not heaps interested in it because I don't need the extra work, but sort of something more to sort of sell some more merch and all that sort of stuff too, to try and sort of help prop this up a little bit as well. It's something that I'm sort of looking at in the background, but to be honest, I'm not looking at it that hard. I'm more focused on looking at more camera gear and stuff like that too, and a few ideas on sort of hiring some people on race night and all that sort of stuff too. So, and then like anything you do on the internet, when you start researching, you go down the rabbit hole and, do you buy a GoPro or do you buy the DJI stuff? Do you buy this drone? Do you buy that drone? It's just sort of everything snowballs, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's midnight. So that's where that's at the moment. So yeah, obviously I'll keep on expanding our stuff at the track, and I want to get it sort of bigger and better, and yeah, sort of researching all that sort of GoPro, DJI stuff at the moment for like onboard stuff. And then then you start thinking like there's a lot of guys that don't want a GoPro in their car as well. They're like just straight up, no, never. They don't want anything to do with it. They think they're a bad luck charm and all that sort of stuff. So then you don't sort of want to spend the money because, someone's going to say no or something. So yeah, sort of looking into all of that at the moment as well. So yeah, that's pretty much the update on our stuff and where the Hour of Power is, especially on the podcast side of things. So yeah, might just see how these go on my own. A few people have asked me to do like a weekly sort of like green screen type sort of dirt tracker style thing, but yeah, I think it's probably a little bit like, for what he does in the States is easy because there's just so much racing that he can do those daily videos, but I think we're probably a little bit short on obviously that amount of racing to sort of cover something weekly maybe. Like, I'll sort of have a look at it and have a play with it and see, might be able to do something short, sort of wrap up kind of thing each week. So sort of definitely want to do some sort of like wrap up thing each week for the SA Sprint Car stuff. So yeah, and then that's probably the next thing really is the SA Sprint Car season is huge. Like, there's definitely never been as big a sprint car season for South Australia than what's coming up. Obviously, the news dropped of the Adelaide 500, which is just ginormous. Like, I don't think, unless you've been to the 500 before and to realise that we have sprint cars racing there, I don't think you can sort of understand how big a deal it actually is. Like, it's absolutely huge for the sport, but to see something like that there is like, it's kind of mind-boggling, to be honest. That's what's sort of happening there, because like, so I've been to the 500 so many times, like, and sort of the biggest sort of like, what's the word? Like, the biggest sort of entertainment thing away from the actual V8s is sort of like, you'd have like Matt Mingay doing the drifting and all that sort of stuff, and like 1 year Ken Block came out and all that sort of stuff. That was like the biggest kind of thing like that. Obviously the gig stuff too is huge. Like, there's so many people that just buy a 500 ticket and they just go to the gig. Like, they do not give two shits about the racing. It's just purely there for the gig because whoever's playing. So that's always been a big thing about the whole event itself. And I think this year they're selling concert-only tickets or something like that. I'm not actually too sure. I know that you can buy a separate ticket just for the Speedway. You don't have to buy. I think it's actually the same as a GA ticket. So yeah, it's gonna be absolutely huge. Like, I think there's sort of a lot of negativity around it too. Probably more so in the background. You're probably not seeing that so much on the social media side, but yeah, I think it's just we all need to be like absolutely positive about it and just charge forward with this and hope it happens again, or I think at a bare minimum, like every second year or something like that, it needs to happen. Because it's just huge for our sport. And I'm like honestly really hoping that you just get so many like regular race fans just come and have a look at it, and then we can try and get them to come to the track, and hopefully this pushes a real reason for something to happen with Speedway City, that we can get some government help out there or something along those lines. Like, the guy's not my cup of tea, but like Malinowskis has done so much for like motorsport and like the whole car scene here in South Australia. Like, he's done heaps of stuff around it. Not that I'm into politics whatsoever, but yeah, everything that's been sort of going on with it has been huge. And yeah, I think I understand. So like, I get the fact that people are a bit wary about the fact that it's a temporary track that's getting built, and for some unknown reason, people are getting all antsy about the safety standards. But you have to understand the Adelaide 500 it's actually not a V8 supercar event. It's one of the only events on the calendar. I think could be the only event on the calendar. It's not a V8 supercar event. The event is put on by the SA Motorsport Board, which is literally, it's like a government department of South Australia. So they put on the event and they are the promoter. So they are the ones who choose what comes and races, what gig gets put on, what band comes, all of that sort of stuff is quite literally done by the SA Motorsport Board. So for people to think that, the track's not going to be safe, or they're just going to use a chicken wire fence, like, you're out of your mind. Like, you're out of your mind if you think a government like department is going to put on like some sort of race and it's just going to be like a chicken wire fence. Like, not only is it a government department that's putting it on, of course then the track is then signed off by Speedway Australia. So to think that it's going to be like second rate, you're dreaming. Like, all of those conversations have been going on for so long now that obviously there's all NDAs are all signed, all that sort of stuff, and that's why no one knew about it. But like, the engineering drawings have all been signed off on, all of that sort of stuff. Like, it's all going to be above board. Yeah, sure, stuff might happen with the actual track surface itself. I get that, but that happens on any given night with Speedway, and to some nights that's part of the beauty of it. Sometimes the track goes real rough up cowboy stuff, and that comes into play for some drivers and others and not and stuff. But yeah, I mean, besides all that sort of stuff, this event is going to be absolutely huge for SA Sprint Cars. You got all those V8 supercar guys there who, a majority of them love sprint cars and are into sprint cars too. And then we've got the regular like race fans who struggle to come out to Speedway because we do have this like bogan hillbilly sort of vibe about us for some reason. So if we can sort of try and get rid of that image and bring these like regular race fans along, because there's heaps of people that are into supercars that are just a casual fan, but they'd never think to come to Speedway, and they're the kind of people we need to come through the gate. That's where the money's at. Like, tracks are guaranteed the diehards money week in, week out. We need the casual fan to come along, who then brings a mate, who then brings another mate, and then we create lifelong fans that way, and then families come and all that sort of stuff. That's what we need to be building here. So I'm very positive about that it's going to happen. So yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be absolutely huge. So, and then obviously wingless are going to be there as well, and streeties as well. And I think there's some juniors are doing some displays and stuff like that too on the Saturday, Sunday. So yeah, it's going to be absolutely huge. I won't be going and checking out anything else there because it's not my cup of tea, as you know. So yeah, that's and like the list of drivers is like, yeah, it's pretty insane, to be honest. And like, well, obviously there's been conjecture about that as well too, but I mean, that was all selected, is what it is. So yeah, I mean, I don't think you could ask for a better bunch of people to be there representing the sport just from top to bottom. So yeah, I can't wait. And then yeah, obviously come end of January, start of February, we have the Australian title at Murray Bridge, which I think is going to be one of the biggest Australian titles for a long time. Purely based off geography too, like, and the week after the Classic, like, there's going to be a lot of people down south, and Murray Bridge is only like 6 hours from Warrnambool, so hopefully a lot of guys that have come down south for it sort of stay for the extra week, sort of down south and come across for it. Murray Bridge has been putting on some absolutely Mickey Mouse racing end of last season, and then the other dual nighter that we had there the other week. Troy's been doing an absolutely phenomenal job with the track, and everyone was talking about it the other week. I think Jock Goodyear posted something about like how he didn't touch a tyre all night, and he was still going to use that tyre the week after. So yeah, it's stuff sort of really starting to turn around there at the bridge. So really trying to sort of build a vibe there as well. So sort of, yeah, it's always going to be a hard thing because it's not metro. Like Murray Bridge is an hour plus from the Adelaide CBD, depending on where you live. So it's a very different thing to go up there to like, for me, where we live in Adelaide, like Murray Bridge, Speedway City, we're both an hour apart, but to some degree, the hour drive to Murray Bridge is probably better than the hour drive through the city to Speedway City, but depending on where you live, it's not sort of a viable option to get there. And obviously there was a very certain type of crowd that would come to Speedway City too, because you look at the demographic that lives in the nearby suburbs sort of thing, which was, you know, was marketed very well towards them. I think Wendy knew that. Sort of had conversations with her before about that she sort of knew that that's where the money sort of came in through the gate. So yeah, it's a very different thing to try and get a crowd up at Murray Bridge purely based off its geography. I think any sort of country track is. It's probably like a bit of a weird thing to say that Murray Bridge is country, but I think technically it is a country town. So yeah, I think just to try and get, especially in Adelaide too, like I don't think, when you say to someone in Adelaide that they're going to travel an hour, it is like they still think we're like the 20-minute city, which we haven't been the 20-minute city for like 30 years, but we still have this mentality that stuff's 20 minutes away. So when you come from Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane, to travel an hour is like nothing for you. But for someone in Adelaide, it's like a big deal. Like it's quite sort of funny. But I mean, obviously as our population's growing and our roads just absolutely suck, it's getting harder and harder to get places, and everything is sort of just turning into an hour drive. But to try and con people to go that hour up the hill seems to be a very different thing. And I think that's the other reason too as to why racing has sort of struggled here in SA as well. Like Michael Miller made a very good point to me a couple of months ago that like you're a regular bloke who lives in, say, the sort of northeastern suburbs of Adelaide, and you raced AM cars for sakes. You didn't need a big truck or anything like that. You just needed a regular car trailer and a Holden Rodeo, and you could drive, down the hill, generally across flat ground to get to Speedway City. But then you get up the hill to Murray Bridge is a totally different story. Like, you then sort of start to need a serious tow vehicle and stuff like that. And that's why it wouldn't even matter if it was back-to-back nights between Speedway City and Murray Bridge. The numbers always dropped because there's guys that just couldn't get there. Like, almost basically physically, because their vehicles wouldn't do it, because you sort of didn't need one to get to Speedway City, considering that it was all pretty much flat metro ground to get there. So, there's all that sort of stuff to sort of consider as well. So, yeah, it sounds funny to say, but yeah, it is. And then another point that was made to me the other day was guys don't have the sheds that they used to have once upon a time. Which at first I was like, seems a bit weird because I've got an absolutely stonker shed. But you look at people who are buying houses now, they're buying townhouses and stuff like that, and they've got a single car garage, and, you wouldn't even consider owning a race car and living in something like that. Like, then you're looking at you parking the trailer out on the road, on the footpath, and the neighbours crack the shits and all that sort of stuff, just big snowball stuff. Or you're looking at the fact of you hire a trailer every race night or whatever. So it's like the landscape changed for a start, and then it's sort of the way the houses have gone too. Blokes don't have a shed anymore. So all of this sort of stuff is evolving. That's sort of maybe why the sport is starting to dwindle, not just the dollar factor of everything that's going on economically either. So, yeah, there's sort of multiple factors going on to all of this sort of stuff. So, yeah, it is. There's a lot of things, I suppose, when you sort of start looking at it all. So, yeah. So, anyway, I can't even remember where I was at now. I think I was talking about SA Sprint Car stuff. So, I think I started talking about Speedway City stuff. But anyway, so obviously the 500, it's going to be huge. Hopefully you're coming. Yeah, I can't wait to see it. We got a video up on Facebook. We went there and sort of did a video on like where it's going to be in the parklands there. That's the other thing that's just absolutely nuts. If you're from Adelaide, to understand that, like, the stuff that gets built for the 500 every year is just insane. Like, that whole pit building for the V8 supercars is only there for the racing. Like, it gets built for that week, and then it gets torn down and gets put back into storage. And then for the fact that a speedway is going to get built in the middle of the parklands there is huge. And I'm real sorry to the disc golf guys that you can't get access for that week. It's absolutely shocking. So it's sort of crazy that it's all sort of, that it's happening. Like, I would never ever have pictured the fact that there'd be a speedway built in our parklands. Okay, sure, it's for 4 days, but the fact that it's happening, and that the SA Motorsport Board have seen speedway as a viable option to do it, because if they didn't see it as a viable option, they wouldn't have been spending the money to do it, because they would have had 20 other ideas on what to do for entertainment throughout the event. And for them to have picked speedway is just huge. So we all need to be positive about it, especially on social media. I can 110% tell you guys that I know for a fact they are looking at all of the social media posts. And when they see guys in there bagging out stuff and talking smack, it's all being noticed. And like, this is the sort of stuff that will come back to decisions around next year and all of that sort of stuff moving forward. So we need to be positive. We need to show up. And yeah, I'm keen as I can't wait to see it. So yeah. And then yeah, the Aussie title. I think things gonna be huge. I reckon potentially in the range of 80 to 90 cars. Just based on where it is, we've sort of got that like 20 to 30 local, and then there's probably the 40 to 50 that will travel from Victoria, and then you've got the bunch of Queenslanders that will already be down, the Sydney guys that'll be down for the Classic. You probably got that sort of 8 to 10 WA guys that'll be over for the Classic, or there might be a lot of guys that are thinking that they're going to come over for the Classic and the Australian title, and that's sort of what makes it worth their while. The way that they actually have planned to run the Australian title the week after the Classic is it's sort of capitalising on sort of that as well, sort of running off the back of it per se in a way, which I think is great. It's not running off the back of the Classic, but it's been timed very nicely for that to happen. There will be a lot of guys in the general sort of area, so yeah, it's sort of I can't wait. I think it's going to be huge. I know I've heard some stuff too. I'll try and confirm it. I heard that the Tailem Bend Motorsport Park is putting some car washes in for the weekend. Obviously, they know that there's an uptick in sprint car guys staying there for the weekend too. So if you've never been down to Murray Bridge before or Tailem Bend and you're coming down for the Aussie title, I suggest very highly on during the day going and checking out the Tailem Bend Raceway. That place, not my cup of tea whatsoever, but that actual venue is world class. Like, just go out there and have a look, and there's a nice little like museum thing downstairs, and I've stayed at the hotel before and everything like that. The hotel's killer. Yeah, definitely go out there and check it out if you're looking for something to do during the day. Yeah, so I already know there's a bunch of teams already staying there and stuff like that. So yeah, I can't wait for the Aussie title. So yeah, we might, I don't know, we'll see what's happening. We might sort of give the Classic a miss and be fresh for the Aussie title. It's going to be a busy week, busy period of time actually. So yeah, and then obviously, so amongst the other stuff that's happening in SA this season, we have Tolma is coming back. I believe at this stage the plan is still going ahead for Speed Week on night 2. We were there probably about a month ago doing some filming, doing some stuff. I'm yet to release that sort of stuff. I'm still working through it and stuff like that too, and just sort of probably personally being a bit careful about what I'm sort of putting out there with it and stuff. But that's going to be huge. That venue is looking so good. That's going to be absolutely killer. So yeah, it's just such a big season in SA Speedway, SA Sprint Cars. We're so lucky. I think it's going to be a hard thing backing up seasons after this, after coming off such a big season. So yeah, I can't wait. I think obviously there's a lot of stuff that's been said. I was sort of one of them as well, as to the whole like high limit versus the speed week kind of thing. And then I think too that like New South Wales, I'm pretty sure that Sydney is running a speed week style sort of thing as well. Could be wrong. But I think there's a bunch of, they traditionally have their boxing nights and that sort of stuff over there too. As like we always have, like traditionally it was World Series kickoff at Speedway City. So that was always that was the biggest night of the season for Speedway City. So yeah, I think Avalon always ran a night and boxing night as well too, which I don't know what last year sort of kicked off on social media about both nights running, but they've always traditionally ran it. So yeah, I don't really see the problem. So I'm just actually looking up the New South Wales calendar. And so I'll just see here for a second. Sorry, a bit hard. I'm not actually, probably one thing too is I'm not doing this podcast video at the moment either. I'll just keep this to a audio setup currently. Just save me a little bit of time and setting up cameras and all of that sort of stuff too. So yeah, slack, I know, but yeah, I just didn't see the point in doing video on my own. You've all sort of seen my ugly mug enough, so yeah. So yeah, huge season for SA Sprint Cars and Speedway in general too. So yeah, I yeah, cannot cannot wait. Um, well, that calendar came up with nothing. So there you go. Might be the Sydney International Speedway. Could be a better bet. Let's have a look here. It is. Sorry, I've just got like terrible Adelaide internet. Here we go. Yeah, so in December they run the 14th and then the 30th and then the 14th of January, 15th of Feb. So yeah, so actually they don't have a speed week style sort of setup as to what we do down south here. So yeah, so that sort of might add to guys coming down for the classic and then sort of sticking around for the Australian title. So yeah, I'm keen as for the Australian title. I don't know if you guys have seen, but I mean, if you listen to this, you probably have seen it. I've created a bit of a scale light as well, which is sort of something I sort of spoke to Adam Curry about it last year. Sort of just needed something for the sort of crowd to get involved too. Obviously, not going to lie, I stole the idea off Eldora and that whole Scott Bloomquist sort of story. If you haven't checked that out, have a look at that on YouTube. That's actually a cracker story. So I sort of stole it from that, and then, yeah, I'm terrible with electrical stuff, so I stuffed it up many times, and then finally got it right, and, yeah, sort of know that I'm going to be ripped off on the idea, but I think it's actually a good thing to be ripped off on. I'm not going to be displeased if someone rips it off, because it sort of just adds to the whole event, and, yeah, from what Nikki was telling me the other week, the crowd was sort of very quiet as Matt was rolling up to the scales, and then, yeah, the lights sort of got held off for a second to sort of just build a little bit of suspense, and then when the light went green, the crowd went absolutely bonkers again. So, and that's exactly what I wanted. So, sort of goal achieved there on that. Yeah, so that's sort of, yeah, done its job sort of thing. So, yeah, so the only other thing I'm going to do, I'm going to sort of make a few mods to it. I've sort of got a much bigger base for it now and stuff like that, because I was pretty worried about it blowing over. So, but I've got a few more mods to it. I'm going to make a little bit lower lights on it so the drivers can see as well. So, yeah, obviously there's a few things to say about it. Some people want it to be connected to the scales and stuff like that, which I'm speaking to a sparking mate, you can do, but I think then it gets all very computer controlled and stuff like that compared to it just being, it's just manual push. So, I mean, it's not really any different to someone just looking at the scale readout and saying that a car's okay anyway. So, yeah, that's sort of, but that's one of my little side projects there for quite a few nights in the shed, and yeah, got there in the end. So, yeah, I sort of plan to make that a little bit bigger and better as well. And I've had a few inquiries. I think there's 2 series that want me to create one for them as well. So, sort of working in the background of doing all that as well. Another thing thrown into the personal time, but sort of more than happy to do it. Yeah. So, yeah, just sort of reiterate, a huge season for SA Sprint Cars. Yeah, and then I suppose unless you've been living under a rock on socials the last couple of days, this whole traction control thing has kicked off once again. I've known for quite a while that the SEAA was creating a device to try and work out if guys are using it. Obviously, there's been lots of rumours and speculation that guys do run it. The word is that there is already over 60 units in Australia from Davis Technologies. Whether that's true or that's just Davis talking up his product, probably can't really guarantee it. I'll tell you what, those 60 units is a lot of money. The units are worth about $7,000 each in Australian dollars. I'm pretty sure. Maybe more. Maybe they're $7,000 American. Yeah. So it's sort of. I mean, there's a very strong argument as to make them legal or not legal. Yeah, so the unit's worth $6,500 American, so that's probably close to $10,000 or $9,000 by the time you convert it to US dollars and stuff like that. So it's a fair whack of money. Yeah. So yeah, I've known for quite a while that the SCAA were testing and creating a unit. Yeah, it's sort of. Unfortunately, it needs to be done. That's what sort of sucks about the whole thing. Yeah. Yeah, that's sort of. Unfortunately, they've had to create it because there has been stuff that's said about guys running them and all that sort of stuff. Heaps of people say that they've heard them, and there's other guys that have talked about how there's telltale signs to say that you can see them depending on certain things that are happening with the car. I'll probably keep that sort of stuff to myself because I don't want to say you can tell by X and then that's what happens and people will say that that person's using it and stuff like that. Obviously, yeah, I made the post the other night regarding it. I got 3 phone calls from people. One person outright admitted to me that they've used it here in Australia, and that they're very, very well versed in it, and that's going back a little bit of time as well. It's not so much the current one. The new one that's out is self-learning, so you don't even have to program it per se. It takes about 2 laps and it works out your driving style and it automatically works off of that. Whereas I know the older ones, they were a lot more sort of programmable than what they are now. So yeah, it's just yeah. From what I understand of it, it's not going to take a guy who runs 10th to 1st, but it will take a guy who runs the 3rd to 1st kind of thing. Like, it's not going to make a guy go out and win the Classic who last year was running the C main kind of thing. So, yeah, it's, I don't know, it's a weird thing. I'm not, I'm against them, like, just outright against them. I'm not a fan of it at all. I think we're such a brutal style of motorsport that we don't need it, and we should leave it for Formula One or that sort of stuff. I understand a lot of guys use it in drag racing, which that kind of makes sense for drag racing, I suppose. I mean, I don't really know how you do it on like a Top Fuel or something like that, but I know like a lot of the guys who do like the grudge style racing, they use it. Davis Technologies, they promote a lot of that. There's a lot of guys that are against this unit, and you can't sort of be against the unit per se. I mean, like, it's a business. He's seen a gap in the market. He created it. It is what it is. It's just the fact that our corner of the motorsport world has said no to it, and we don't use it. But even that, there's series in America that allow it, which is that sort of gets very muddy in the waters there. They've allowed it because it prolongs tyre life and engines and all that sort of stuff too. So then that's one side of the debate that comes into it as well. Yeah, it's, I don't know. A lot of people have known it's been around for quite a while. Like, it's probably in excess of 15 years that it's been around. We've all heard stories about guys that are having it in the MSD box and all of that sort of stuff. Now The new style one is not even in the box. It's quite literally in the plug. And then the controller unit is like the size of a 50-cent piece. And there's all the stories about guys that got them sewn into their suits and, you know, they hide it in their shoe and all of that sort of stuff. So there's the whole debate as to like, oh, you should be checking guys' MSD boxes. But the problem is with doing that, you've actually disconnected the unit. So with the unit that the SCAA has created, it allows them to see all the data, to see whether the RPMs or the spark or anything like that has been curtailed, you know, because they can tell whether it was done, you know, via the driver or via something else. They'll see the way that the mapping sort of retards itself. So I understand why the SCA had to make that, and then all the stuff's come out that it's damaged some motors over the weekend in Perth, and then the other night on socials that all kicked off as well, saying that it hasn't damaged any motors. It was just it somehow limited the motors on the night, which from some people that I've spoken to who had some stuff to do with the invention of this box, they say that that's not possible because it's purely a recording device. It's actually not. It can't curtail the motor, and or it doesn't stop the traction control being used. It purely just records the data from the engine. So yeah. So one of the other phone calls that I had is one person said that they've got the latest unit from Davis Technologies, and they're creating a unit to detect the fact of it being used. From the reading that I've done, and this person has done as well, it seems to be an extremely hard thing to detect because it seems like Davis is not using commercial width Bluetooth. It seems to be potentially almost on like the military grade bandwidth of Bluetooth. Because one of the things that this unit does is it can read the engine up to 200 times a second, and then it can calibrate like immediately. So that's not going to be on the level of Bluetooth of like you connecting your phone to the car to listen to this podcast. It's like something much, 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 much greater than that. And when you look into the patents that Davis has got, he actually has a bunch of patents around Bluetooth itself. So it kind of makes sense that it is Bluetooth, but it's not like a commercial grade sort of, you connecting your headphones or connecting your phone to the car kind of thing, or your speaker or something like that. So it is quite a intricate device. And I've heard things of Davis himself saying like, you can't catch us. He knows that he's sold it to teams who run the big series in America and stuff like that. And I've heard other things too, that he knows that every car in certain features and certain series over there had his device in it, and he knows that certain teams and drivers were having their wives and their girlfriends buy the device, so it wasn't their name on the packaging and stuff, but he sort of knows who it is too. And then I've heard of people here in Australia that went to buy the device, he's made some phone calls, said, no, I'm not selling to you because of who you are and stuff like that too. So, I mean, obviously the other thing is too, there's no way in hell that he wants a detection device either, that people start getting caught with it, because if people start getting caught with this thing, he's not going to be selling them anymore. So that's sort of part of the reason as to why he's made this device so sort of tricky. From what I understand, the ones that he sells for drag racing aren't sort of as secretive as what the circle track dirt racing ones are, because it's not illegal in a lot of classes of drag racing. So yeah, unfortunately, it's a thing. So we either need to work out that we're going to allow it, or we're going to stick to this of like, no, it's illegal, we're not using it. And that's sort of where the SCAA is in terms of they've got this device that looks for it. And there's all sorts of debates about whether those drivers were picked at random. There was no communication as to how they were picked at random, like was it a pill draw, were they targeted, or anything like that. it is what it is. It's unfortunate that those guys did have a bad night at the track, and if it is a result of this unit, well then yeah, the SCAA has got some answering to do. It seems at this point in time, the SCAA has been quite open with the whole thing. They have said that they're keeping the data to themselves for the current time. I'm assuming you'd really need someone who knows what they're looking at to be able to look at that data and say whether someone has used traction control or not. I'd assume that would be someone along the lines of like a racing engineer, maybe an engine builder. That was sort of the other thing, that some of these engine builders have come out and said that their engines weren't damaged over the weekend from this unit being used. I suppose they sort of take a knock themselves when it's been said that that's what's happened, and it's not true. There's always, like, I've spoken to Pete Morris before about this, how we sort of say in this sport a lot of the times, like, oh yeah, they did a motor and like the motor was over, and then it's like, it actually wasn't. It was like, it was just something, it was a simple fix, but it's not fixable in the night. Like, it's sort of very rare that a motor does just go bang and it's game over for the whole thing. In this sort of day and age, it's, can sort of just be something like a valve spring breaks or, something like that. It's not always absolutely detrimental to the engine. It's just sort of the way things go, is that, oh, it was a motor that went, and it's not necessarily, that's the full sort of case of it. So yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that it's sort of come to this, and that's what's happened. Like, 3 out of the 4 guys had issues with their cars with this unit. Some people are saying that it's because the unit was stopping the traction control, but that's not the case whatsoever, because the device from the SCA is purely just reading the data coming out of the vehicle. It's not cutting it out or anything like that. It's just purely reading the data. And if that somehow has had an effect on the engine, then yeah, like I said, they've definitely got something to answer for, which I'm sure they're researching through all of that at the moment. And it seems to be sort of once Jason McIver's taken over, it seems to be the SCAA is a lot more open than what it has been in previous years. So they're communicating a lot more, and yeah, I think it's ultimately a great thing for the sport. That's sort of what's happening. So the third phone call that I had was someone who is very knowledgeable with the device. They said that they've had sort of first-hand experience with them in America, not themselves, but they know someone over there that uses one quite regularly, and it is a very big thing over there. And unfortunately, the guys who sort of run top 10, top 5 over there in certain series, it's sort of a case of that you sort of have to have it, because otherwise you're going to get left behind. So, which sort of contradicts the other phone call that I had, where the other person said that he thinks it's starting to go away in America, because when you look at these big series, he said the way that, like, World of Outlaws and High Limit quarantined the vehicle after making the podium, he said it wouldn't be worth you getting caught in those series. So he said he thinks a lot of these guys may have used them in the past or anything like that, but he actually believes that a lot of guys are now going away from it, because he said you don't get access to your car for quite a few hours after making the podium in those 2 series now. He said, like, no one can go near him. He sort of said, like, yeah, sure, you see the guy, if he wins the race, he gets to do the whole wing dance and stuff like that, and the car's there for the media stuff, and then straight after that, it's sort of taken away to the series trailer, and it could be there for quite a few hours before it gets given back to you. No crew or anything like that has access to it. So, as usual, as with anything, there's sort of contradicting stories 2 and 4 and everything like that. Yeah, I mean, I just don't know what you do. I mean, if you do catch someone using it, it's definitely going to be there has to be, like, I mean, it's in the rule book that we can't use them anyway, so there's definitely going to be some ramifications for using it. There's all sorts of things that have been said in the past about fish finders being used to find them and stuff like that, but apparently that's out the window with the new one. Apparently back in the day, like sort of 10, 15 years ago, the fish finders were a thing. I've heard some stuff too about Bluetooth scanning vehicles, but then that comes back to the thing of like, and the bandwidth that he's using for the Bluetooth, you're not going to find it on a scanner unless you've got some sort of military grade Bluetooth device. I have heard other things too about some tracks are using jammers. One of the things that this person who rang me said he's researched and he's spoken with the Chili Bowl. Apparently the Chili Bowl has a bunch of jammers that can jam it because, I mean, going back a few years ago, traction control wasn't illegal at the Chili Bowl, and then I think it was either last year or the year before, they did outlaw it, but obviously guys have ran it forever and a day. So the Chili Bowl had some sort of jamming device that was messing with it. What that actual jammer looks like, I don't know. I know firsthand that any sort of communication jamming device is illegal in Australia. It's illegal to own and it's illegal to use unless you're like military or something like that. I have done my own very deep dive into all of that stuff. That's a story for another day. So it's not even going to be something that you can potentially jam either with this new one. Yeah, I mean, it sucks that we're at this point that it just sucks that this has happened, and you know it has opened a very bad jar, to be honest. Hopefully it all gets sorted out. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure that if there is guys in Australia that are running them or have run them, with what's sort of going on now, you probably assume that they're going to be pulling them out and not running them, because you can, bet the house on it that nobody wants to get caught with this. From what I know of, nobody has been caught with one in Australia. I actually couldn't even find anything on the internet as to anyone being caught running one illegally in America either. Obviously, there's stuff with some of the series that run them, they don't really check for them, and one of the stories I knew from America was the old World of Outlaws technical manager. He actually ran one himself, doing some Sunday racing in the States, because they didn't really have rules as such. It was like pretty much like, if it looks like a sprint car, you can come race with us. So he was running one to do his own sort of process on learning them, how to use them and stuff like that. And that's where I got the info from, of like, it's not going to take you from 10th to 1st. It will sort of take you from 3rd to 1st kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, it sucks that this is where we're at with it, but yeah. I mean, what do we do? We need to either stamp it out or we let them in, but letting them in, I see, is going to be like anything else that is going to be in terms of advantages. Like, they'll either get better and then another brand will come out and a better brand, and then it's like, oh, he's using the new one, and then like, oh, we're using the old one, and then it's like, and to be honest, that's not what sprint cars are about. Like, it's just, we're sort of one of the last rawest forms of motorsport. I mean, you look at the engines, we don't have any sort of computer tuning on them or anything like that. We've done extremely well to keep all of that stuff out of the sport, and it's still very much a sort of a manual adjustment sport. Like, you look at the drivers, the only thing they've got to adjust on the fly is the wing back and forth. Obviously, non-wing USAC stuff in the States, they can adjust shocks, and the midgets, they can adjust shocks and stuff like that. But for the most part, there's very little sort of tuning you can do on the fly. So we've done very well to keep that sort of stuff out, compared to when you look at other forms of track racing where they've got different fuel curve switches and they can change brake bias and, all of that sort of stuff. So we've done very well to keep ourselves raw. I've had that conversation with Jamie Cobby before. You look at a sprint car from, sort of 30, 40 years ago, and it's still recognisable as to what it is today compared to other forms of motorsport, which are just completely, they look nothing like them, sort of thing. IndyCar's sort of a prime example of that. They used to look killer back in the day, and now they look absolutely trash. So, yeah, I think we need to stamp it out, and which I think even with what the SDAA is doing, it'll put a dent in it for sure. Even just by them saying, and then coming out and saying that they are using this device, I'm sure has got some people sort of thinking twice about using one if they are. Like I said, the word is that there's over 60 units in Australia, so I mean, some guys might have just bought them to have a play with, to see, or there could be guys that are actually running them or whatever. I actually don't know. I can't. Like I said, can't think of anyone who's actually been caught with one or has, besides the one person who rang me, confirmed that they have actually ran one in Australia. So it's not really something that you come out and say, not publicly anyway. So yeah. So pretty much that's probably going to do it for this one, guys. I'll sort of have a play with this sort of format, I guess, and I'll see how I'm going to go doing this in the future. Yeah, maybe do them every fortnight, or might throw like a quick one up every week, wrapping up that weekend's sort of racing or something along those lines. Not really sure. I'm not really sure where this whole side of Hour of Power is going, to be honest. Obviously, the focus has changed, sort of switched over very largely in the last 12 months, even though this has only been sort of really only going for about 18 months at best, kind of thing. So, stay tuned. Tune into our Facebook page. There's always stuff sort of going up there every couple of days, stuff like that. Make sure you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Need to try and tick that over and sort of start making some money for that if possible. And if you're at the track, come take a day. Peace.